My name is Alex Bennett, and I'm the owner of a music school called Milwaukee Music Lessons. I've been teaching music for about 15 years, and I've taught over 300 students. I teach guitar and drums, and I also have experience with piano, voice, bass, and a few other instruments. I work a lot with beginners, growing musicians, and even some advanced players. And today, I want to share with you why learning music theory helps people at every single level. Now, we've been working on a series for a little while that's been exploring the 5 pieces that I think are most important to a musician's growth and journey, and how I evaluate people when I'm teaching about where maybe some of their weak points are. And so we've been going through a few of them. We've talked about technique and physical abilities. We've talked about experience. And today we're going on to pillar number 3, which is all about music theory. Now, really quickly, before I actually get into the meat of this episode, I am trying a little bit of a different format in the way that I'm doing these episodes. In the past, I've always had them with Robin, but since we've had our second child, she just hasn't been available for these podcast episodes. And so rather than shutting down the podcast, I'm taking it a little bit of a new direction, and that means I'm trying some new things out and experimenting. This episode is going to be a bit more scripted than some of the other stuff that I've done in the past. And hopefully that keeps things on point, that makes things a little bit more effective. And maybe it makes the episode shorter, maybe not, but hopefully it's a little bit less off the cuff. So with that said, let's talk about some music theory. Now, when I say that some of you may feel nervous, maybe you think of school, maybe you think, I just want to play songs, I don't want to do homework. And that makes sense. But today, I want to show you something new. Music theory is not necessarily a rule book, and it's definitely not a test, and it definitely doesn't take the fun out of music, although maybe if you use it in the wrong way. But music theory is a tool. It's what I refer to as the language of music. Learning music theory is like learning how to read. You can talk without knowing grammar, but grammar helps your words make sense. And so you can play music without theory, but theory helps your music make sense. It shows you which notes belong together, it explains why music sounds happy or sad, and it shows how ideas in music connect. Music theory helps different musicians in different ways, and today we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about how theory helps beginners, how theory helps intermediate players, and why advanced musicians tend to use theory the most. And by the end, you're going to see that theory does not make the music stiff, it actually makes the music free. So let's break this down into a few different sections, and we're going to start at the logical part, which is beginners. So when you first learn music, it can feel confusing. You press a key and you hear a sound. You strum a string, you hear a sound. You try to remember where your fingers go. And at this stage, music theory is more like a map. It helps answer questions like which notes are going to sound good together, why does this chord sound nice, why does this song feel happy or sad. And for beginners, music theory does 3 big things. You see, first, it puts music in order. Instead of seeing many keys or strings, you tend to see patterns, scales, chords, steps up and down. Music starts to feel smaller, maybe a little bit easier. Second, it helps you learn faster. Instead of learning one song at a time, you start to notice patterns. You might think, this song uses the same chords as that song. And now you're starting to learn ideas as opposed to just songs. And then finally, third, it starts to build confidence. Music theory becomes less of a guessing game. You know what key you're in when you're playing a song, you know when something sounds wrong, and best of all, you know how to fix it. And so for beginners, theory answers this big question: what am I doing when I play? So let's go over a few examples. If a song is in the key of C, most notes are going to come from the C scale: C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Another example might be if you learn that C, F, and G are common chords, you can play a bunch of songs with them. And then if a chord tends to sound wrong, theory helps you see that the notes may not be in the key, or may not be in the key that you thought it was. And now you're not just pressing notes, you're actually choosing notes that fit. Big distinction there. Okay, so After you get past that beginner stage, now we start to run into the intermediate level. And let's talk about intermediate musicians. This is when people tend to feel stuck. A lot of times at this stage, they can play some scales. They probably have a lot of songs under their belts, or at least a reasonable amount of songs. And they have a few chords, and maybe they have some solos. But they ask, why do my solos sound the same? Why can't I write my own songs? Why does this chord work here, but not in this position? And at this level, this is where the music theory starts to become a language. You got to think about learning a new language. If you only memorize sentences, you could repeat them. But if you learn how language works, you can make your own sentences. And music works the exact same way. Theory helps you understand what is happening in a song. It helps you make choices instead of guessing. You learn things like chord patterns, distances between notes, song parts, how chords work together. And here is what this looks like in real life. If you know a song uses the same 4 chords, you can find them in a whole bunch of songs. If a singer wants a song higher or lower, what we call transposing, you can move the chords into new keys. If your solo starts to become boring, theory helps you choose better notes. And now you're getting past guessing. Now you're starting to figure out how to fix mistakes. And you're learning to be creative. You're learning to create your own music or maybe do some sort of improvisation. You move from being a player, somebody who's strictly copying the notes that you see, to starting to become a musician, somebody who actually owns the material. You're not just copying, you're choosing. And instead of asking, what do my fingers do? You start to ask bigger questions like, what do I want this music to sound like? Okay, so these are, again, I'm broad stroking a lot of things. This isn't necessarily a theory lesson. This is a little bit more about why theory starts to become beneficial for you specifically. So let's move on to finally part 3, which is once we get to the advanced level, what we're calling the toolbox, okay? So at the advanced level, these are players who can typically learn songs really fast. They can play in just about any key. A lot of times they're very good at being spontaneously creative, what we call improvisation, and they are able to write songs and perform with a huge level of confidence. And for these players, music theory is actually a toolbox. They don't think about it all the time. They use it when they need it. And they use theory to study music, study songs that they're learning. They use it to try new styles, new genres, new techniques. They make music feel tense or calm with their understanding of the music theory. They're able to use alternative chords inside of a progression. They understand how to swap things in and out because they understand their relationships. And they can even get to a point where they can start to write parts for other musicians because, again, music theory is a universal concept. It's stuff that applies to all musicians in some facet or in some capacity. And for example, they know some chords want to move to other chords. They understand that. They can change a simple song in order to make it sound new and fresh. They can use chords from other keys to try and change the mood in different ways. A lot of times they understand why music feels emotional, why music feels finished, and why certain music feels uneasy. And so advanced musicians, they use theory to bend the rules on purpose. They understand the rules. They understand how everything fits together the normal way, quote unquote normal, right? And then they choose when to break them. And that is the difference between a mistake and a smart choice. Part 4, let's talk big picture, why theory helps. So let's zoom out for a second. Music theory does one main thing. It turns confusion into understanding. For beginners, it explains what is happening. For intermediate musicians, it explains why it's happening. And for advanced musicians, it helps them control what is happening. So some people think that theory kills creativity, but the truth is theory gives you more choices. Without theory, you copy, and with theory, you create. Without theory, you guess, and with theory, you choose. Without theory, you need charts and videos. But with theory, you use your ears and you use your brain. That is freedom. Okay, part 5, why all this matters. And this is why music theory matters. Music is special because you can start at any age. You can always get better, and you can share feelings without words. Music theory is what connects all of this. It helps you play with other musicians. It helps you understand the songs that you love, and it helps you be creative. It's not just about being perfect. It's about playing on purpose. The more you understand music, the more music makes sense to you. So whether you're a beginner learning your first scale, a player writing your first song, or an advanced musician working on your sound, music theory is not something to fear. It's something to grow into. The goal is not to memorize the rules. The goal is to understand music so you can make it your own. And that is what real musicians do. Now, in the next episode, we will go one step further. We talked about music theory as the language of music, and next time we will talk about using that language with your ears. Ear training means learning to hear what you already know. It helps you to hear when a chord changes, when a note feels tense or calm, or when something sounds right or wrong. Music theory gives you the words, but ear training helps you hear those words in real songs. So next time, we'll show you how to use theory to train your ears and play with more control and more confidence. So if this episode helps you, we would love to hear from you. Please like this video, leave us some sort of comment, follow or subscribe to our channel. This helps other musicians find us. It'll also help us know what we want to talk about next. And also, please leave me some feedback on whether or not you thought that the scripted format was a little bit better. If you thought maybe I was a little too stiff or didn't go off on my rants enough, I don't know. I'll let you guys be the judge, and I'm looking forward to your feedback and hearing what you guys have to say. Thank you very much for listening. We will see you in the next episode. My name is Alex Bennett. Take care.